This has to be my first mature manhwa or webtoon. I usually don't read a lot of webtoons, and so yeah, I decided to kind of get into it. This was, I think, number three or number four in the romance section, or the most popular trending one, and so I decided, heck, why not? Let's give it a chance. Let's see what this is all about. It seemed like a really interesting premise, and it was. It is. It's also a because it's a mature uh manhwa, it's rated 18. So there's a lot of censorship done. There's uncensored versions that you can find outside of Webtoon. Yeah, it's got some smutty scenes. But I do find the plot regarding the main character, her struggles, her being in a strange situationship with her ex-husband really, really interesting. I didn't even realize till like I think it was intentional that the author did that. Like you don't realize that they're exes till like 3 or 4 episodes in. You're like, oh, it's complicated. But there are two main love interests that come into the picture. The first one is a cheating, self-absorbed ex-husband who sucks. The other one comes off as a nice character at first, but he is a stalking, manipulative liar. So they're both red flags in their own way, and I really hope things work out well for this woman, really. She's stuck in a really toxic, bad situation. So, this manhwa begins with the protagonist walking in on her husband having sex with another woman, to only realize it's just a dream. Pushing aside this really grim dream, she goes back to work. After work, Hesu returns home and is greeted by this little shit, Mincho. Fans like to call him Bichil instead. He is a selfish loser who's gotten them into so much debt that Hesu, the main character, has to work nonstop to pay off because he used her name when taking out the loans. He might have had good intentions when they were in their early 20s, but as they got older, now in their early to mid 30s, Minchill's personality got twisted and warped. The webtoon spends a good chunk of the time in the beginning of the series to show off his nasty side, before slowing down later on to show the person that Hesu once fell in love with, and the many sacrifices that he made for her, that he wasn't always this bad, that he was once upon a time a loving person. But now, he's just a parasite who leeches off his wife's earnings and is on probation, I'm guessing because he got into debt. That's not really clarified on, but he can't get a higher paying job. He only has one job, by the way. So his wife has taken on various jobs to pay for the debt. And despite being taken care of most of the time by his wife, this worthless piece of shit hits her with a would it kill you to wear makeup? And you make me look bad when you're walking around with a face like that. Right after she just got off work. Bro, what are you talking about? She reminds him that they barely have money to cover rent, but he doesn't care because he only cares about how things affect him and his appearance. Hesu wonders if she lost her spark, her beauty, her glow because of him, or because she herself is to be blamed for choosing to fall in love with him. There are internal monologues filled in this webtoon that grip you, especially since Hesu isn't a young teenager, but an adult woman who finds herself with a lover who's changed so much over the years and has eaten away at her strength and self-love, wearing and tearing her down, constantly mocking her appearance, constantly pushing down on her. And despite that, she's still pushing on because she finds herself to be able to get through these rough times if they just stick together because she loves him that much. In short, her life sucks, and Minchil adds to the heartache with his words and sour attitude. She's stuck in a toxic relationship and is struggling to break free. Her life story starts to shake up a bit when a rose guy enters. The rose guy, okay, of course. He is the stereotypical rich chaebol character. Is that the word, right? The rich CEO guy, or the son of a rich CEO. That's him. I'm pretty sure that's a really common manhwa trope, but whatever. The first thing I noticed about him was like, damn, his legs are so long. Like, look at this panel. I don't think I'll be able to even screenshot the all of his legs. I'll have to like chop off his head to be able to screenshot like how tall he is. Like, damn, dude. But anyway, he ignores Jesus' coworker and asks her to ring him up instead, which the coworker is kind of offended by and is convinced that the Rose guy comes in daily for Jesus and that the Rose guy must have like a big old crush on her. She says this, but eventually later on, when the Rose guy and the main character end up getting closer, she kind of does a little flipperoo. She kind of gets jealous and she's like, I don't really think he's into you. Like a guy like that, why would he be into an auntie in her 30s? And I'm like, damn, you were hyping her up at the beginning of the comic and now you're her biggest hater. Damn. Jesus' confidence is low. She thinks to herself of how the only person that's ever complimented her on her looks recently has been her coworker, even though, I just told you that the coworker turns into a little hater. Yeah, she reflects on how her own husband, Minchil, doesn't even see her as an attractive person anymore, and it just breaks her heart. Later, Minchil tries to get intimate with Jesus, but she's exhausted after work. She just wants to go to sleep. So he starts ranting about how he has a job too, and how she never acts cute, funny, or cheerful around him anymore, and how now she won't even react to him trying to get intimate. He's, as you can tell, a gentleman of some sorts. His wife wakes up every day 2 hours earlier than she needs to make him breakfast. He doesn't like his breakfast without stew, so she makes that for him daily. He's picky and gets upset when she doesn't slave away for him. She doesn't even get to have the breakfast that she's made for him because she has to rush to get to work, and she usually works on an empty stomach and has to wait till it's lunchtime. What gets the Rose guy and Jesus interactions going is her stomach. Her empty stomach. One day, her stomach growls when she's handing him his receipt, and he kind of hears it. So he orders coffee for himself and a sandwich for her. This kickstarts a proper conversation between the two of them compared to the daily customer employee routine that they've been going through for a while. He leaves the sandwich behind on the counter for her, and she thinks that he's forgotten his sandwich and rushes out to hand it to him. He's a little perplexed as to why she's handing him the sandwich, and realizes that, maybe she has nothing to drink with it, and hands her his own coffee. He's just being a sweetheart. He just wants her to have a little coffee and sandwich. That's all. Also, I don't know if I mentioned, but Jesus and Mincho are definitely divorced, and Minchul had divorced her right after getting them into that enormous debt. And I'm like, dude, did you do that so that you wouldn't have to burden a good chunk of the debt? So the loan sharks wouldn't come after you, but they would come after your wife. Like that was really shady. Because also, Minchul is such a complicated character because at the beginning of the comic, he does everything to distance himself from his ex-wife, right? He just tells everybody he's single. Like no one at his work even knows that he was married once upon a time and is divorced now. No one knows that. They all think that he's completely single. They don't know that he's ever been married, right? And he does his best to keep it that way. He never he doesn't claim the husband energy, no. But later, like way later in the comics, when Teja is actively involved in Jesus' life, he is like everywhere as like, oh, I'm her husband. And I'm like, weird. Very weird. Anyway, he doesn't want people knowing that they even live together because he's embarrassed and ashamed by it. But I think he just doesn't want to be connected to Jesus at all. He's so shady. Like I said, at Minchel's work, his coworkers don't know that he's in a strange situationship with Jesus, so they kind of encourage him to smooth talk and flirt with Ari. Ari is a coworker of his that has an enormous crush on him. Minchel realizes that, like, oh, she's got a crush on me? And so he decides that, okay, I think I'm gonna try and pull a move on Ari. And so when he goes home, he gets super cuddly with his wife, right? He gets cuddly with Jesus and he's like, honey, I need a new cologne. All my coworkers have new scents and I don't. Can I please have some cash? So he's asking her for $200 USD. brother, why do you yeah, he's always, like, trying to buy expensive designer stuff, and he gets mad at Jesus for not wanting designer stuff, and it's like, y'all are broke. Y'all are barely affording rent. Of course she doesn't want designer stuff. What the fuck are you talking about? Anyway, Jesus like, no, we don't have money for that. But he kind of guilt trips her. He says things like how she's dull and how despite her dullness, he's still living with her and how no one else would put up with her. And her face in this panel says it all. He's poisoned her with these words for 13 years, sucked the life out of this woman, and made her very emotionally dependent on him because she truly believes that he is the reason that she's able to keep moving forward in her life. But remember that he wasn't always this disgusting person, right? So it's understandable why she's clinging on to that hope that he'll return back to his former self. Once they pay off the debt, they'll get remarried and then they'll try and start a family. And so she's clinging on to that hope because he was so different. So the next day before going to work, despite saying that she won't give him money, she leaves $200 for him to buy a new cologne. She reflects on how Minchul used to be so loving and she wonders if she ruined things for them, if he changed because she wasn't smart or caring enough. You're not the problem. Bichol is. Obviously, he takes that money, buys a new cologne, and impresses and woos Ari. Ew. Anyway, this comic isn't all gloom and doom. It spends a significant amount of time getting you introduced to all the characters, Jesus' headspace, so you can properly understand how complex her relationship with Minchul is, how dependent or emotionally dependent she is on him, and how her world would come crumbling down if they went separate ways, right? So she's codependent. And it slowly increases the interactions between Teha and Hesu. They don't have a proper conversation until episode 5 to 6, which is chapter 5 to 6. It's a slow burn, but hey, I'm not complaining. So, Rose guy, Teha, right? He definitely stalks Hesu. He has her schedule down to a T because she works various jobs, right? So he has information on all her shifts, where she works, and he even shows up to one of her works. Well, he's the rose guy, so he's at the flower place, but he shows up at another place, which is the barbecue place. He shows up there with his friends, hoping to catch a glimpse of her at work. There's a day where Jesu's umbrella falls apart. Teja shows up and walks her home, using his umbrella to make a little small talk, to get a little closer to her. They silently walk back to her place, and his eyes are on her the entire time. She wonders to herself how when she walks next to Minchil, she's always falling behind, and how, despite the fact that this guy, Teja, is so tall, he's keeping up with her pace, and they're sharing an umbrella equally, and she's just like, wow, this feels nice. It's all these tiny things that start eating up at her and makes her think about, like, huh, why can't Mincho be like this? And I'm like, girl, because he hates you. She's kind of confused by Teja's kindness and she wants to know what his intentions are. And he simply responds with, I want us to be acquaintances. She thinks on it and responds that she'd rather they be strangers instead. And he says, okay, he'll be a good boy and listen to her. Yeah, there's some out of pocket cringe dialogue here and there. I never said this was cringe free. Hesu is intrigued by his obedience. It's obvious that the comic is attempting to showcase how Teja simply respects her boundaries, and Hesu is just not used to it since Minchol is always pushing her buttons and boundaries. I don't trust Teja. Teja's a rich boy. He might be just using um Hesu to cure his boredom, and maybe when he's done toying with her, he's gonna bounce out. I really hope that doesn't happen, but he's kind of a mystery. He's a big mystery in the comic right now. We don't know much about him, and she knows nothing about him. Everything that he has said to her about himself is a lie. Maybe not the troubled family part, but his troubled family part isn't as bad, I feel like, as what she's imagining. But when Hesu enters her apartment, she noticed that Mincho forgot his umbrella, and so she decides to go pick him up from his work. She waits in the rain under her umbrella and notices him walking out of the building with Ari, sharing a yellow umbrella. He lies to Ari and calls Hesu his relative. I'm sorry, but this man has to go. Like, he's all like, she's kind of a cousin. And he gets pissed off at her for questioning who that other woman was, and even yanks the umbrella more towards himself, like, dang it, share it with her. The next day, Hesu runs into a rude customer who decides to embarrass her because she refuses to pour a drink for him, and he makes her get on her knees and beg for forgiveness. And she complies because she's kind of numb to everything at this point. After work hours, the drunk customer gets spooked by Teha, who stalks him down. And Teha is in his kind of yandere era, so he always attacks people or starts shit with people that give Jesus a hard time. But before he beats the guy up, he has him, the drunk guy, punch him so that he can later show up at Jesus' convenience store job and buy band-aids and earn some pity points. Because Jesus gets really concerned. It's like, whoa, you're covered in bruises. What happened to you? And he's like, I have a troubled family. And she is so sad because she comes from a troubled family too. Her family was abusive when she was a kid, so she's like, "Oh, fuck you too." Because she always calls him kid, even though he's like 23 years old. She still sees him as like a really young person because he is. There's like a 10-year gap between them, so she's like, "You're a kid." So she's constantly calling him a kid, and he honestly is kind of childish because he's just toying around with this woman. That's how I feel, but anyway, he's like, "At least I managed to get your pity points." He says that internally. He doesn't say that out loud, but yeah. Oh boy. But at this point, they finally exchange cell phone numbers. Meanwhile, Minchol basically bitches about the things he doesn't like about his ex-wife to his coworkers, but he portrays it in a, "Oh, these are the things that I wouldn't like in a woman" type shit, you know? And Ari is just in the corner fawning over him. Ari has had too much to drink and she's into him, she likes him, so she invites him to go drinking at another place with the two of them. And of course, they end up at her apartment and bang, while Jesus is waiting for him at home and he lies to her that he crashed at a bathhouse. It's a mess. The webtoon obviously censors a lot of the smut. Teha, he just keeps trying to get closer and closer to Jesus. He even trades shoes with an old classmate to look poor and relatable. He also likes being scolded by her because she's all concerned about him, like, "Oh, you need to buy new shoes, you need to take better care of yourself." He just likes gaining any sort of attention he can from her, and he feels like he needs to constantly put himself in like some sort of bad shape, so getting beat up or hurt to gain her attention because that's like the only time that she pays attention to him because otherwise she's focused on Mincho instead. There were times where I was like, man, this is kind of getting cringe, but I kind of want to see how things turn out with the main character's selfish ass husband since she is kind of in debt and in love with him. Plus, what was the deal with Teja? Why was he so obsessed with Jesus? I was worried that he had malicious intent. I just didn't want to see her get hurt, so I braced myself and continued reading. Teja's inner thoughts would freak me out. Like, when he thinks she's so cute and naive, it made me paranoid. Like, bro, what are you about to do to her? Is he like making her fall in love with him just so he can control her? Despite all the mystery surrounding him, he does do his best to support her, to help make her fall in love with her own self again, raise her and boost her self confidence and see her worth. And, when Minchol starts cheating, he does eventually get himself involved to expose him and help Jesus not blame herself. And so he does do good things, but he's shady himself. She doesn't know that he stalks her. She doesn't know that he already knew that she was married and divorced before they even talked. He knew everything about her before they even talked. That's creepy. That's creepy. Jesus eventually finds a lipstick stain on his work shirt, and that's when things slowly start unraveling. And the master behind it all is Teja. Dude, he has patience. Like, he helps set up the timing of everything. But anyway, he buys a bunch of heat packs and stuffs them in his jacket, making it seem like he has a super high fever and goes to Jesus' work. She's worried about him and decides to take him to her apartment to give him medicine because he likes to act like he's super naive and dumb and doesn't know anything. And Jesus, she is kind of naive and likes to treat Teja like he is a kid, even though he's a grown man. Even like her coworkers are like, huh? Why does she always treat him like that? But he's a grown man, but he takes advantage of the fact that Jesus treats him like a kid. And so he's like, "Oh, I'm feeling sick. Give me medicine." And so she takes him to her apartment. What she doesn't know, but Teja does. He's got his eyes on Mincheol's every move is that Mincheol is back at their apartment hooking up with Ari. The jig is up. It's satisfying, but sad because Hesu breaks down. But before she breaks down, she, walks into the apartment, um, sees what's happening, and yelled at Minchol, but she also lets Ari know that they've been together for 13 years. Minchol tries to, minimize the damage, and he chases after Ari, but Hesu yanks him by the head. She yanks him by the hair. Hesu's world and love for Minchol begins crumbling down. Minchol's all like, "What are you gonna do? Break up with me? I know you'll always stay." So, he's taking her love for granted. But there's a shift in her emotions. He just doesn't realize this because he hasn't seen Teha. He doesn't know that Teha has kind of infiltrated into his ex-wife's life, and that unlike how Hesu would normally forgive Mincho and would go back to him, things are not the same anymore. And she has a little bit more self-respect and love for herself now, a little bit more confidence than before, and isn't as dependent on Mincho as before. He waits for her to text him back because it's been a while. He is crashing at Ari's place and he waits for her to call, but she doesn't. She doesn't even text him back, so he starts texting her. What Hesu doesn't realize is that Teha had blocked Mincho's number from her phone when he stayed over one night. And yes, Teha takes advantage of the emptiness and absence of Mincho and wins over Hesu. It's a slow process, but he eventually does it. He does eventually end up dating and getting into a relationship with Hesu. And when he stays over one of the nights, he notices her phone ping. He had noticed what her phone unlock pattern was at the convenience store and kind of memorized it because it was really simple. And so he uses that pattern, sees that the text is from Minchul, and he's been texting her a little bit. She hasn't seen it yet because this was the beginning of Minchul kind of losing his mind. Like, why isn't she texting me? Why isn't she calling me? And so he blocks her his number. And so Minchul starts losing his mind because why is Hesu not responding? Why is she not looking at these messages? What's going on? What happened to her? He kind of starts getting paranoid that something happened to Hesu, that the loan sharks got to her or something. He starts spiraling. Teha is absolutely enjoying Minchio's downfall. And yes, I did mention this earlier, but Minchio successfully manipulates Ari into taking him back, and that's why he's able to crash at her place. Because I don't know, he just plays a little puppy, oh, I'm a sad little puppy role, and she kind of just is young and naive. Not really. Homegirl is like not that much younger than me. So, because she's 25, and I'm like, no. Hesu finds herself thinking more and more about Teha. She can't get him out of her mind right when Minchul isn't there. And she kind of reflects on how her relationship with Minchul is, how moving on is rough, and how she doesn't know if she'll ever feel whole again if she does move on. But, Teha kind of starts infiltrating her thoughts, kind of helps her kind of move on. He takes her on a date one night and they go up to see the city lights. And he's like, shout whatever you want and get it off your chest. And obviously, she shouts about how much she hates Mitchell and how she'll never get back with him and yada, yada, yada. And, she starts feeling more liberated. What she doesn't know so far is all the lies that Teha has built their relationship on. When she questions him about his recent new job, he deflects and redirects the conversation elsewhere. It kind of sucks. This woman can't catch a break. I really love the writing for the main character in this because she's just like a bundle of emotions. I think it's very realistic how she is and how she would struggle to break free from Mincho. 13 years married to somebody and the wounds are still fresh. Some people would probably bounce back, Breaking free completely from a toxic relationship is a slow process. So, yeah, anything can happen. Also, not to mention, Minchul is actively looking for Hesu, and when he drops by their apartment one day, she's not there, but Teha makes it seem like Teha lets him know, hints at him that they're together or so, or maybe that something bad is happening to his ex-wife. One of his employees kind of poses as a loan shark. Are these loan sharks taking advantage of Jesus? He's just really paranoid. He wants to see her. Minchul does beat up Teha, but it works in Teha's favor because he, uses that to his advantage to be like, "Hey, your ex-husband beat me up. Wah, wah." I just wanted to really quickly make a short video. With the way I'm yapping, my recording session says it's been 34 minutes. I hope the heck not. I hope when I'm editing this video, I'm able to cut it down because holy hell do I yap a lot. I'm making a quick video because the Norigami video is going to take a while to come out. It's going to take maybe 2, 3 weeks. So see you next time. Bye bye.